So first, I'm going to introduce to the stage Professor Veronica Healey, who's the Dean of the University of Bath and also the Vice President for Corporate Engagement. Next to her, we're going to have Peter France, who's the Chief Executive of Roadtalk. Roadtalk are a market-leading actuator manufacturer and flow control company, so any market where you need to control the flow of liquid or gas, they're in it. Thirdly, Professor Ojha, who's the Director of the National Space Academy, which engages young people in science and maths and in the inspirational context of space. And finally, next to that, Vanessa, who's the Chief Executive of Moon Consulting. We're recruitment consultants serving companies across a range of sectors throughout the Southwest. And finally, Ian Risk, who's the Head of Airbus Group Innovations UK, who obviously playing a pioneering role in terms of the evolution of the air transport sector. Can you place the other side? Sorry. I'm going to start with you, Ian, actually. So we talked a little bit this morning about the culture for innovation, and I wonder what that looks like at Airbus. How do you make sure that people who work for you have the time or incentivised to actually innovate in their day-to-day jobs?
Well, I think there's a number of different facets to it, one of which is about making sure that you've got the available time in order to be able to do lots of things. You've got to have the processes that allow people to generate their ideas, formalise those ideas and have those ideas challenged. And finally, there's the aspect of, do they have the facilities in order to be able to innovate? And certainly where there are new technologies, we've created data science labs, we've created immersion cells where some of the engineers can interact with the new technologies. But at the end of the day, we're a very traditional company, we manufacture things. And one of the key aspects for us was in effect to create almost like a garage where engineers of today, they are based at a workstation, they very rarely be able to get their hands on the tools and equipment they need to build something. So we've created an initiative called Protospace, and we have a very large garage in Filton where engineers are able to come in, prototype, experiment, and as we spoke about earlier, fail, because they understand what it is to fail, they understand the problems that they're encountering, they get the support they need by skilled operators within the facility to help them. And so that's really, those three things for me help build the culture.
And do you see that as part of their day-to-day job to sort of be doing that type of stuff, or is it an additional thing?
It's part of everybody's job. I mean, in order to be able to be an innovative company, everybody has to be involved. And it's not, and I stress, it's not just the engineers, it's everybody in the business that need to have access to these tools and techniques to see how they can do their job better, whether it's engineering, whether it's procurement, finance, IT, all of those things need to come together to get to real innovation.
Peter, perhaps I can bring you in as well. So we often in our surveys we hear that businesses value innovation, but they've struggled to find the time and the space to innovate. Is that something that you struggle with at Roadtalk?
Yeah, I think trying to understand the commercial benefit of some of the projects is always a challenge, and what you want to do is you're focused on hitting numbers in a particular year, and sometimes that can get in the way of that long-term strategy and that development plan. So I think you've got to then look to the wider situation and plan for the future and make sure you create that time and that long-term vision of the direction you're travelling. The problem we've got at the moment is that technology is changing so rapidly in a traditional market where we've got customers who don't want to change. It's not a mobile phone where they want a different one every year. They want to have some consistency of the product. From an engineer point of view, that creates some other difficulties in how do you innovate that is beneficial to the customer.
Veronica, often people, when they're looking for help with their talent challenges, they look outside the business, and universities obviously a hotbed of talent, local research aside, and through a pipeline of graduates. How are you at the University of Bath working with businesses in the Southwest and beyond the Southwest to sort of support them in innovating?
Okay, so one of the things that strikes me about your comment, Peter, is that one of the challenges of innovation is you've still got to deliver the day job and you've still got to deliver the bottom line. And so how do you make space for that innovation whilst ensuring that you're keeping your investors or shareholders happy? And I think one of the ways that universities can help in that is that we are, in our research, entirely future-oriented. I mean, that's what we're about. We're about innovation, new working practices, new forms of supply chain. And if you look across the world into other cities, you will find global cities really partnering with universities for them to drive the innovation and to bring it back into the business. Give you two examples of how we're doing that today. EDF Energy, as we all know, fantastic force for good in the Southwest, have just invested £1.5 million in the University of Bath in a supply chain innovation lab. Why? Because they can't afford for that supply chain around Healey to go wrong. And they want the most innovative approaches to supply chain management, and we bring them world-class research and support them through that supply chain, through their journey in building and operating Healey. Tomorrow, I'm actually working with one of Peter's employees, with 17 others drawn from across small to medium-sized enterprises in the Southwest. And it's part of the Osborne, now Greg Clark, Productivity Through People initiative. EDF, Babcock, Rolls-Royce, and BAE Systems have come together, formed this Productivity Through People programme, and we're taking the research we've done around innovation in working practices and sharing it amongst 18 people working for SMEs. Now that's a fantastic way of using our research to inform your working practices without you having necessarily to do all the research or take the chance yourselves. We know what works or doesn't work because we're doing the research, that's what we do. So that's one of the ways you can use us for research, quite apart from teaching and providing talent through graduations and graduates.
And you've also got a kind of a position in an agency which sits sometimes between industry and education. How do you kind of collaborate with the industry side, and what kind of techniques do you use?
I think taking one step back, first of all, you've got to recognise with an industry hat on that if you want to engage with the education sector, it has gone through unprecedented levels of change in the last 10 years. I'm talking at school level as well as university level. And very often what really gets me worked up is that I still hear senior executives from industry talking about O-levels, talking about CSEs and so on. The landscape's changed considerably, and so it's really going in, if you want to engage, not from a top-down paternalistic point of view of we are doing this for your good. It's finding out what their needs are, or what their requirements are for the engagement, and then building, I think critically, a plan that can be sustained. Because going back to what you said, Ian, and then following on from what Veronica said, is that it's all very well to talk about the importance of this type of engagement, and everyone does that. Inspiring the next generation of scientists and engineers has become a cliche, and we all know that there's some great photo opportunities that are taken. When a minister comes along, and it's almost like it's the baby kissing photo. And then very often the prioritisation and the sustaining of that engagement approach disappears. So I know it firsthand from one of my former students who's now, I was talking with Ian just before we came on, who's now finished his higher apprenticeship at Airbus. One of the things he has valued is the innovation space that he has given. Now I know that, following on from what you said, Veronica, there is a cost to the company. But that cost, it's a strategic decision that's being made. The cost implication, that is borne by the company, and you are seeing the benefits there. So I think that if we are to do this work, I think the companies need to be realistic about who they're engaging with, why they're engaging, and to make a long-term commitment to keep supporting that engagement. Because the danger is, just as you get going with a very effective engagement strategy, be it at school or university level, it gets going and then the prioritisation changes and the funding goes. And I've seen too many of those programmes happen.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. It'll be interesting to see from the audience when it gets to the Q&A what your experience is with that kind of engagement programme too. Bring you in, Vanessa. So you obviously sit in the recruitment space, and we're often talking about a shortage of talent. That's what CBI members would believe can be a barrier to innovation. Where do you see those shortages most from where you sit?
Well, I think we all know where the shortages are. They're areas from construction, engineering, languages, some financial services, some very niche roles. So it's a bit of a tough market at the moment. And then we've got factors in the southwest, particularly in terms of our infrastructure, our road and rail networks, where our companies are based. We've got the impact of Hinkley Point, how that's going to impact local companies within the Somerset area. So it is a bit of a mishmash market, I'm afraid. Then you've got hubs of excellence. So, for example, in Bristol, you've got there's I think it's called Silicon West in the southwest. So you've got hubs of great talent and creative and media coming through. So it is a very mixed portfolio currently.
And in the overall dynamic, perhaps I'll bring you in again. We're talking a lot about big companies and the great programs that they can run, but obviously there's a whole host of small and medium-sized businesses who are competing for that talent as well. What do you say that they could do if you perhaps aren't in a position to put in similar programs that you're doing?
Well, I think there's a number of options for them to look at, but certainly understanding how they can work with the academic base much more than they do today, looking at the opportunities particularly to bring in PhD students, have industrial secondments, and work with their large industrial partners. And often if they're part of the Innovate UK kind of collaborations, then get to understand these mechanisms that are available. We've also initiated a research foundation in Wales called Endeavour, where it's a joint venture between ourselves and the Welsh Government, and again to look at how to create almost like the innovation ecostructure, for the lack of better words, just draw two cliches up together. But basically to put that ecostructure into place whereby we can invest in local SMEs that have innovative ideas that may be applicable to our market, and also use that as a vehicle for engaging with academia. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, and I think talking to some of the key research providers, supporters, sponsors in our space is a really good move forward.
Well, I mean, I hope everybody is aware that there's this huge new research fund called the Industry Strategy Challenge Fund, where the government is putting money in to allow industry and universities to work together on research that the government will fund precisely to try and address some of the issues that we're talking about here today. I think the other thing I just want to clarify from this productivity through people is exactly what you're talking about. Although there are 4 corporate sponsors, Babcock, Rolls-Royce, etc., the delegates are being drawn from those 4 MNCs' supply chains. It's the small to medium-sized enterprise people who are sending the delegates on the programme. So this is not support for multinationals, it's support from multinationals into the SME sector. The EDF initiative is exactly the same. It is how do we support the SME sector in the Southwest. The other thing I just want to add, because I was at a global conference, I think I'm crackling, aren't I? Yeah. It's quite odd, isn't it? I don't know why I'm crackling, and I don't think I can stop myself crackling. Unless, somebody's going to come and help me stop crackling. Are you going to switch me off on the other one?
Yeah.
Marvellous. Okay, so the crackling will now stop. I was at a global cities and universities conference yesterday in London at Queen Elizabeth Hall, and you had 1,000 people attending from universities all over the world. We are seen as amazing in the university sector. We are seen as world leading along with America still. And in the Southwest, we have world-class universities. And I'll absolutely tell you, if the Southwest doesn't absorb this talent, the rest of the world will. So we've got to look at how we retain the graduates from all disciplines, science, engineering, management, and keep them in the Southwest. Because we're growing them, they're there, and Shanghai will come and take them, and Mumbai will take them, and Singapore will take them, and Australia will take them. So the issue for all of us in this room, and the universities would love this, is how do we keep the talent we're creating? How do we stop them going elsewhere in the world? or to the southeast. And that, I think, is one of the big things that we'll certainly be looking at over the next 5 years.
Come in. I just wanted to echo that. It's not, and I don't think it's just about graduates. I think it's the whole workforce. It's about looking at your company and how you're projected in the marketplace. So are you seen as a good employer? Do you give good feedback? Do you extend your vision to the whole company? Do you extend your vision to people that you're interviewing? So it's the whole process that you're seen as a business. So this whole thing about attraction, retention, recruitment is really important. But then the other piece is about, we talked about skill shortages, is talent tracking, which we do as a company, and I know lots of other companies do that as well, but seeing who the sort of future leaders are, and then tracking them as they go through their careers, so you know that they're there. So I think that's important to say as well.
Just following on from there, we talked about the importance of identifying that talent, and very often I think the discussion when it comes down to new talent is looking at people who are just out of university or just out of school and going into apprenticeship type routes. You know, we're now in the era of people recognising, young people especially, that they'll have 3 or possibly 4 distinct career paths during their working life, a working life that's going to be far longer than any of us imagined, or certainly my age imagined when we were at school in the 70s. Therefore, I think it's really important as well for companies to, and I know we say we do it, but recognise the internal talent we have and recognise the potential perhaps for cross-training people within your existing organisation into a different part of the company. I think very often we think we've got a handle on where you've got a long-term employee, you think you know that they're really happy being in this part, whereas actually internally they're thinking, I would love to have the opportunity to cross-train and move to a different part of the business. Now, this is, I think, more important for large companies. I think SMEs are more nimble, they have to be, and they'll tend to do this anyway. But I think it's really important that it often gets overlooked, the skills development and talent support for people who are over the age of 25, either within your company now or potentially in a completely different sector at the moment.
Does that resonate with you Peter, as well?
I think, you know, I see both sides of that really. I see a certain age group that actually work-life balance is different to what it was a number of years ago, and so they're looking for something slightly different. I think there are some that are looking for a career that is challenging, but maybe they don't want to change. That you're talking about, that they're happy to do what they're doing, and as long as they get paid a decent amount of money for doing that, they're happy to carry on. You still get the people then that are ambitious and want to look for those other opportunities, and you have to give them those opportunities. And developing internal talent, I think, is a very important part of growing any company. And we've been successfully developing our own internal talent for a long time, and part of that is with an apprenticeship program that we've supported for many years, and actually our apprentices that have worked through the company are now in senior positions all across the company running the business, because actually they understand how the company works better than anybody else in the organisation, because often they've been around to various departments, and so if you say to them, can you go and get this to happen, they know all the tricks to how to make it to happen. So actually the apprentices have a really good knowledge throughout the whole organisation, and I think that's really important to develop those. But I think we have to recognise that not everybody wants that. So we have to structure the business around a variety of people and a variety of disciplines. And we tend to talk about the same things, but actually there is a much broader piece here. We've engaged with students and schools for a long time, and the council approached me to do a lot with advanced engineering, and I said, okay, but the problem with advanced engineering is, in Bath, I spend a lot of time in the school, there's a lot of students in this school that are not going to be advanced engineers. So what for them? What are we doing for them? And I think a balanced economy provides all sorts of different jobs and roles for people, and we need to, as a body of people, I think, is start talking a little bit wider, not so narrow about certain jobs and certain benefits, because I think there'll be a lot of people that we miss out if we do that.
So you're nodding along.
I am.
Yeah.
Sorry, do you
Ladies
It's like after you.
No, I mean, I think, just picking up on the point that Anu said, I think it's about us having a small business mentality within our workforce, within a large organisation. I think, again, we've heard, the Google generation or whatever, the way in which young people are entrepreneurs, they're doing things for themselves. They get into a large organisation and they suddenly find constraints, bureaucracy and such like. And I think what we have to do, and what I've tried to do in my area of the business, is try to empower those people as much as possible to give them the greatest knowledge of how to operate right across the business. Because I really recognise, pick up on the point that you made, Peter, about the apprentice community have a very strong network. They understand how the organisation works from bottom up and how changes, because any innovation is going to bring about a change, how to break the barriers of that change, who within that network needs to influence that. So I think that's one of the, a really strong point in terms of having that small business mentality, because that's where you get your agility from.
Yes,
I'm just going to agree with Peter in terms of everyone having an opportunity and recognising talent within the organisation. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Can I just add as well that I think we sometimes talk about the millennials, and we talk about the millennials. How are you going to engage with them? How are you going to keep them? But I think we also have to recognise that a lot of them are spending time in their rooms on their own with their phone and iPad, not communicating. One of our biggest challenges is when we have students or we have apprentices come for interviews, they may be very highly qualified, but they cannot communicate. And if we carry on with the whole sort of that's okay, and we have to have it's all apps and it's all this. That skill set, how you work in a team, how you communicate, and how you do that for a large group of students, they'll miss that. So I think as businesses we need to also create that and not be shy or embarrassed about saying actually some of the traditional things that we did in the past are still valid and we still need to carry on doing those, and I think we should stick with that a little bit as well.
No, I mean, a lot of the research that I do at the moment is around trust and organisational change. And one of the things I say to our graduates is, look, you may have spent your life looking at a phone or a laptop, but I'm going to tell you, when you get into the workplace, people are only going to trust you by how you behave, how you speak to them, and actually what you're doing down the iPhone is relevant to them. And I couldn't agree with you more that there is some really basic old leadership management stuff that they need to put the blooming iPhones down and just lead relational skills really. And I mean, I sound as though I'm doing a commercial break for Bart, but I think it's, John Hunt will tell me if I've got this wrong, I think it's 80% of our graduates do placements before they graduate, year-long placements, and that's when they learn that actually they've got to relate, they've got to be part of the team, and they've got to understand usually there's a bit of a hierarchy. And it's a little bit different from what's coming down the iPhone.
The only challenge is that's a little bit too late when they do it then. And that's why we engage with children, I think, at primary school and secondary school, because we've got to work with them then. If they're coming on their placement year and they're just learning how to communicate, I think we missed the boat.
I think communication is also written communication, because the one thing in my world, I like a nice covering letter and a nice CV without any spelling mistakes and being able to spell the name of the company that they're applying for correctly. So that's one thing that I feel sometimes is being missed, is that basic how to construct a document.
Or we could just tell Alexa to dictate the letter for us and we won't have to worry about spelling it wrong.
That's how emoji CVs.
Emoji CVs. I'm going to open it out to questions from the floor now. Has anyone got a question for the panel? It's just here.
Hi, I'm Bob Taylor from South West Water. Interesting debate. How do you see robotics fitting into this discussion about the future and talent management and talent growth? I mean, I have a 17-year-old who locks himself in his room as well with his iPhone and his iPad and doesn't come out for hours. He says he's working on his A-levels, you know, pinch your salt with that. But, you know, almost the people who do that and just get focused on those mechanical activities are the ones who could lose out in the longer term. So is that an argument to use?
In my world, there are some systems that you can buy which are like algorithms, so if you're searching, you can, I guess that's a form of robotics, you would be searching for a particular skill that way. But I feel that the personal piece is far more important about the person, the ability, the future. So I'm not quite answering your question, but that's what's important to me.
I think I totally agree with the concerns that are being expressed, but I think there are some potential solutions. From my experience, and there's two levels of experience, one is my teenage nephews and the other is my 2-year-old son. And I'm going to make sure that he doesn't fall into the traps that we're sort of potentially laying out as, here. If I think about my nephews, that they are that generation, they're 16, 17, and they will lock themselves in their room and so on. But they're also very good at communicating when they have to. And what I've tried to unlock, and the family's tried to unlock, and I'm sure other people are trying to unlock, is when you switch from one mode to another. Because I think young people, when I look at my experience teaching in schools, which I still do a little bit of, but it was 20 years of it, actually they do have, through school programs, phenomenal communication skills when they're forced to do it out of their comfort zone. So what we need to do with young people at an earlier stage is get them to realise that actually the way they're working on their iPhones and their technology is, in a way, they're far more fluent with technology in some ways than we are as an older generation. But what we need to do is to make sure they realise when it is appropriate for this mode and when it is appropriate for this mode. So my optimistic side says actually they're capable of both, but it's getting them to understand when it's going to be key to apply it. At a second level, though, I think what I am seeing from the space sector and what it's concerned about is it's saying that the communication skills of graduates, and it's focusing on graduates, is really worrying. Now, I don't think you can lay it on the blame on universities, because I know the proactive work that universities are doing with communication skills. But I'm less worried about young people being sort of still at school. I'm more worried about the trend in graduates, because once they're at the university level, I think it's harder then to get them to retrain to be able to deploy in one way and deploy in another way. That's where I think we need to get in at an early stage.
The question about robotics and artificial intelligence is an interesting one, because by some estimates a lot of jobs will certainly change. To what extent are companies like Airbus, for example, are very sort of thinking about what the future skills might be once you start implementing some of these technologies? Does that come up at sort of boardroom level conversations at the moment?
Well, it has come up at boardroom level in terms of we have a global digitalisation programme, because clearly we understood the nature of our business was changing. We understood that there was a lack of available resource within the organisation, so we've identified partners to work with, commercial partners to work with, but also looking at academic partners in order to develop the longer term skills. So again, looking at the apprenticeship kind of agenda. So in the past we've focused just on, if you like, the blue collar sort of market, which will be severely impacted by the robotics issue, but you know, either replacement or supportive of operators. But taking that much further in terms of the apprentices for the digital era. So we're now working with the likes of Exeter University on apprenticeship schemes.
The levy, how do you see the levy as really pushing forward apprenticeships and widening that uptake of apprenticeships with companies?
Do I have to? I think the idea of increasing apprenticeships and supporting them and encouraging them is absolutely a good thing to do. When I understand the levy, I'll most probably be able to give you a bit more of an answer about whether it's beneficial or not. Because from what I can see at the moment, I'm not sure it's going to necessarily achieve, as all these things, the exact requirement of what was set out to achieve at the beginning. And I think the main issue is what constitutes an apprenticeship. You know, are lots of other jobs now going to be called apprenticeships because that's an easy way of doing it? Is it just a training and then you've got to pay the salaries? But if you train more people, you've still got the salaries to pay, can you afford to do that? And then if you're not taking them on, if you're paying then into a pot that you're not benefiting from, but you were already heavily involved in apprenticeships and doing a good apprenticeship program, that feels a bit unfair. So where it is at the moment, and I'm waiting for a report to explain all this to me, and it's taking several months to come through, and it's still not here yet, because I think that crossover of the cost benefit is still very difficult.
So just to follow up on that, I mean, my team were involved in scoping up the national higher apprenticeship for the space sector. So this is people who leave school at 18, they go straight into the workforce, and they do the first 2 years of an engineering degree as part of it. We had full industry buy-in, upstream, downstream, and so on. Everyone shaped it up, said it was an outstanding program, and we had extremely limited take-up from industry. And we think it's because certainly in the space sector, it was the issue of tuition fees that came in under the old apprenticeship models. I think the amount of funding that was available from government was far higher than it is now. Companies were being asked to contribute in a far larger way. Now, the apprenticeship levy, and I'm waiting for greater clearance on how it's going to work, potentially gives us an opportunity to reapproach these space sector companies and to say, look, because of this that you're being levied on, there's an opportunity for you to restructure, create new funding mechanisms along with these new roles and so on. However, my concern remains, it's the use of that term apprenticeship, because when we scoped up the higher apprenticeship program, we actually said ditch apprenticeship, because as soon as I go in to a senior group or at board level, as soon as I say apprenticeship, it doesn't matter that I say it's a degree apprenticeship program, they're thinking it's level 3, it's for people who've left school at 16. We tried to say, let's make it a technical education program. They said, no, you must stick with apprenticeship for political reasons. This was 4 years ago. And I think, therefore, when we're talking about apprenticeships, we need to be much clearer about which apprenticeships we are talking about, because I think there is still a tendency to bundle everything together. What is it that this levy is going to be aimed for? And from your own organisation, who are you going to focus on?
Thanks very much. I've already run out of time there. Just to stay on the apprenticeship level, you see you guys obviously doing a lot of work on that, staying very close to government, so please do find out more from one of the team if you're interested in knowing what we know. Not me, so I don't know much. So close the panel there. Thank you very much, and thanks for your time.